I'm so excited. We've been talking about fear. We've been talking about promises that are surrounding and in the subject of fighting fear. And I thought I'd tell you about one of the scariest moments in my life. And I thought I would share that and just set up today's message. But like I say, it's one of the scariest moments in my life, but it's now one of the greatest and funniest stories that I've ever told. And so it was the story of Theo being born, and I'll try and keep it brief, but there's so many funny aspects to it. So I hope that you enjoy this. But anyways, Theo, me and Michaela, we were actually eating dinner with a family, another set of pastors that live here in town, and this was the first time we'd ever been over to their house, and we're hanging out, we're having fun, and we're just eating, just fellowshipping, and Michaela gets up from the table, and I hear her say "babe," and I look over, and the whole front of her pants is just like getting wet, like her, and so her water broke. And like I look over at her and I'm like, "Oh my goodness." And we are just both freaking out about it. And not only that, but the couple that we were with, they like got super excited. Like I mean, they were like, "The baby's coming. Oh my goodness." But we're freaking out because here's the deal is that was 7 weeks too early. Michaela was only 33 weeks pregnant, and so it was way early for Theo to come, and so we're a little bit nervous, but we're also, and not only that, but Michaela, she was a high risk pregnancy, so her doctor was in Little Rock, and so we're in West Helena. And so we're just like we're getting scared, we're trying to figure out what to do. So nonetheless, we get in the car, we drive 2 hours to go to Baptist in Little Rock, and we're calling our parents, we're calling all of our spiritual leaders, and we're telling them what's happening. The baby's coming, and all these different things. And as we pull up to the hospital, her dad's there with the wheelchair, and we go into the hospital, and we get up into the triage room, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen like in a movie where like somebody's water broke, but here's the deal. I know in the movie it looks like the water breaks. It's like a little like a balloon busted or something like that. Let me tell you, it is way worse than that. It was like a river, and I say that because and I asked Michaela for permission for this, so just so y'all know that I'm not just out here telling everybody's business, but it was crazy like how much water there was. I mean, it was so much. Like I turned to one of the nurses and I said, "Is this normal? Like, is it normal for her to have this much fluid coming out of her body?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, it's normal, to calm down. Just relax. It's fine." Da, da, da. And so she gets out of the triage room. She gets into her room where she was gonna have the baby, and a second nurse walks into the room, not the nurse that was helping us, but a different nurse walks into the room, and she told us that the first nurse that I talked to told her that she had never seen that much water in her entire life. And so she lied to me, I guess, to try and keep me calm. But it was just hilarious because so we're set up, and we're sitting in the room, and the doctor comes in and he tells us, we're going to try and keep you as pregnant as long as possible. So he was like, at the worst case scenario, you might be sitting in this bed for the next 7 weeks. And we're like, that's crazy. So they're giving her all these different things to try and help Theo and whatever, and so we're like, okay, well, what do we do, like what? And he's just like, just relax. You're gonna we want you to stay here at the hospital. It's gonna be a long ride, so just relax. And so I'm like, okay. So I'm trying to relax. I'm trying to calm down. Her parents are in the room. We're trying to relax. And so I walk her parents downstairs to go to their cars. And on my way back into the hospital, I'm like, man, I should go get some like chips and a drink, or a couple of snacks, bring them back up to the room, since we're gonna be chilling all night. And so little did I know, on the second floor where Michaela was, there was a bunch of nurses coming in and out of the room. A bunch of beeping started going off, and all of a sudden, the doctor walks in, and she looks at Michaela and she says, "The baby's coming now. We have to do emergency surgery." And you have to go now. And so like Michaela automatically just tears start flowing from her face because nobody's in the room with her except these 15 doctors that are like changing and scrubbing down and getting ready to take her to the emergency room. So she tries to call me, and to make it even worse, my phone was in the room. So now I'm downstairs trying to get me some Doritos and an apple juice, and then the all I hear on the intercom is Quayshawn Duval, we need you on the second floor, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what happened? So I throw the stuff down, I run up the stairs, and I'm trying to figure out where we are, and I don't know like hospital map. I was lost, and I'm just trying to figure out where to go, and I'm like, what happened to my wife? And so finally get up to the room, and I'm running down the hallway, and she's coming down this other hallway. So we meet at the intersection, and there's these 15 doctors that are around her with their hands on the cart, and she's sitting there in the bed, and the doctor pulls up to me, and she goes, "Your wife is having to go to emergency C-section. The baby's coming now. You can't be in there. We'll tell you when we're done." And then they just rush in the room, and like I'm left in the hallway all by myself. Like, what in the world just happened? Like, we just went from going to get some Doritos to like now the baby's he's coming. And so I'm sitting in the hallway, and I'm like, I find a chair, and I go just frantically kind of go through my phone, and I start texting people, just trying to tell them, hey, the baby's coming. I'm texting Michaela's parents, my mom, hey, the baby's coming, and then I started texting every spiritual leader that I had ever come encounter with in my life, just like, please pray, the baby's coming. So it was like about 15 minutes later, which was the longest 15 minutes I've ever had in my entire life, the doctor walks out and says, the baby's here, your wife is fine, the baby is fine, he's got to go down to the NICU, but everything seems to be going good. And like, sigh of relief comes over me, but like I am exhausted at this point in time. My emotions have been running rampant. And here's the thing. That was one of the scariest days of my life. And again, I bring it up because we're learning about promises surrounding the topic of fighting and battling fear. And today is we're doing our last promise on fear in this series. But there's plenty more promises and plenty more words about fear. One of the coolest things in the Bible is that God tells us not to fear somewhere around 365 times. And so that's one do not fear for every day of the year. And it's so funny, and it's so cool to think that. But here's the thing. Fear is as persistent as the flies in the Delta. So here's the thing. No matter how many you kill, there's always more coming. Okay, there's always more coming, and there's plenty where that came from. But I have a promise today that I believe that will help you if you really apply it. And we got to understand that the Bible and its promises aren't any good to us if we don't embrace them and apply them to our lives. The Word of God is like paint in that way. It's only useful in its application. And so a bucket of paint doesn't do me any good if I don't apply it to what I want it to be on. And not only is its application and its purpose in the application of the paint, but it's also the beauty of it too. And so, meaning this, the power of the Bible can't be just accessed by just sitting and listening to it like we're doing right now. This is important, but at some point in time, you have to walk out the things that you're doing. And so we're here to learn about Isaiah 41 today. And I talked about Isaiah a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about how the Babylonians, they were captured, and they were in this struggle in themselves of feeling like God had left them and forsaken them, and it was a difficult time for them, not a lot of hope for the future. and they had a lot of fear. And like many of us, when we have fear, we tend to turn to what we call idols. And idols are what, in a sense, they're called like, the little g gods in our lives that we put above God Almighty. Another way to say it would be things that we depend on in a way that takes our dependence off of God. And uh, and some of that is like we have God as number one on our list. Like when we are worshiping God, that means that He is number one on our list, and that means everything else, our marriages, our children, our family, our jobs, all of that stuff falls under the number one of God being in our life. When we elevate the things that are under God above Him and make them number one, when we elevate our spouse and make them more important to our life than God is to our life, that's what we call an idol. And so we got to understand that at some point in time, these Babylonians, they had their dependence on God or on idols, and we find ourselves in Isaiah 41:10 today, and it says this: "So since you have been chosen, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." And so let's break that down. That's our promise today, and I want to break this down for us. Is the first thing that he says is since you have been chosen, since you have been chosen. That's the foundation of everything in this world, is that not that we loved God first, but that He loved us. And this is the greatest first step that you can take to fighting fear, is understanding and remembering that God chose you. We didn't earn it. There was no way that we could. Actually, what we should have earned is rejection. What we should have earned is God turning away. But God is unconditional in His love, and God still chose us, even when we messed up, even when we did bad things. And this is the difference between God and mankind. I when I was a kid in school, on Fridays in PE, we used to play dodgeball every week. And you remember dodgeball in school. Like, the coach would pick the team captains, and then the team captains would pick the people that they wanted on their team. And so you start going down the line, and if you were a good athlete, you were probably one of the first ones picked, or maybe even the captain. If you weren't that good at it, then you got to witness everybody else getting picked, and it was like, in between, maybe it was in between you and the other kid that wasn't as good, and you were just like, man, please pick me. And nobody ever wanted to be the last person, because the last person actually didn't get picked. They were just the last person. And so it was like every time they would flip-flop back between, like, now it's just up to you, and everybody's walking away as you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm on this team. And so it's one of those things where you look at that and you're like, man, it feels much better to be picked than it does to just have to be put on a team. And I remember, for me, as I played, I wasn't necessarily one of the top picks, but I was always at least picked somewhere in there. I knew at some point in time I was gonna be maybe if I was the fifth pick, the sixth pick, I was in the middle. But I remember this. I remember one time I was playing dodgeball, and we were trying to pick the teams that day, and I was like, one of the seventh or sixth picks or whatever, and I remember thinking to myself, next week I'm gonna play so good this week that next week I'm gonna get picked as one of the top picks. And so I thought to myself, what do I got to do to get picked as one of the top picks? Well, in my mind, I'm like, well, if I get one of the best guys out, then they'll pick me next week. And so if I continuously get him out, then I'll be one. And one of the guys in particular, he was He was a football player. He was like an all-star athlete. I mean, like 6'2". We're talking like in the eighth grade. This dude is humongous compared to me. I was like not even 100 pounds, maybe close to it in the eighth grade. But it was just like I thought to myself, I'm gonna take this guy out. And I realized there was no way I was probably going to hit him with the ball, but I knew that I had some good hands. So what I did was I tried to position myself in a way that I would catch the ball that he would throw. And once I caught it, we know that in dodgeball you get out. And so I remember uh, being one of the last people in the game, and he's in the game too. And I'm like hyping him up, trying to get him to throw the ball at me. And I'm standing about like midways back. And anyway, this dude throws the ball at me. And I kid you not, I grabbed that ball with both hands, and that thing must have rolled me back like 3 feet against the wall. But I still held on to it. And I remember the sound of it hitting my chest and just like getting up and being like, because it took the wind out of me. But I guarantee you this, the next week I was one of those that got picked first because I had the hands, and so it was one of those things for me where when you get picked first, it makes you feel special. It makes you feel like you're not a loser. It makes you feel like you're not a reject. Like someone chose you. Someone cared about you enough to choose you. But let me tell you this: you don't have to do anything special for God to choose you. You don't have to earn it, be good enough or whatever. God chose you because he loves you. God chose you because he created you. God selected you even when you fail. God still chooses you. You got to understand that. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us? Well, if God has chosen us, it says, so then, if God chose us, here's what we got to realize is that we don't have to fear because God is with us. And we don't have to be dismayed because God is our God. And it says it that way. It says, don't fear, I am with you. Don't be dismayed. I am your God. And I don't want to have to fear. I don't want to have to fear things that are in my life because I know that God is in my life. And whenever Theo was born and I was in that hallway for about 15 minutes, like I said, I texted about every spiritual leader that I could think of in my phone, just scrolling through and just saying, please pray. Theo's coming early. Michaela just went to surgery. Please pray for my family. I need God to intervene. And somehow, I don't know, I didn't realize it really until just now, but I remember myself singing this song called Good Grace by Hillsong. And I just had this one part stuck in my head, and it was the part that says, don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high. Don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth, that God is madly in love with you. And then it gives you a few things. It says, take courage, hold on, be strong. And then it says, remember where our help comes from. And I repeated that part over and over again because I wanted to remind myself that I don't have to be afraid of the outcome, because I know that whatever happens, whatever comes about, God is going to walk with me, that God that God is going to be on my side, that he is my God. And I'm thankful today that I have a healthy wife and a healthy baby. But I couldn't have made it through that situation in that moment without my dependence on God. I think in that 15 minutes I would have lost my mind if I didn't know who God was and I didn't know him in my life. And so the command is to be the opposite of afraid and dismay. What does that mean? Well, we talked about it last week. We talked about being strong and courageous, and that's what the Lord has promised us. Is I like the way that Isaiah puts it. The promise finishes with the promise that he has for us, saying that we don't have to be afraid and dismayed, but instead this is what he's going to give us to help us with it. He says, I'll give you strength and I'll help you, and I will hold you up with my right hand, or my righteous right hand. And I love that. Strength. You'll be strengthened, you'll be helped, and you'll be upheld. I think the funniest thing about people is that we fight fear often, and it's an inner thing that is tough for us to get rid of. Like it be, I know that some fears we have that are on the outside. Like for instance, for me, I am afraid of snakes. So the first form Satan was in was a snake. So I don't deal with them, and mainly because they're faster than I am. So it'd be different if I get away from them. But like if I come across one and he's in the middle of grass or whatever, like I'm just like, Lord Jesus, just take me now, just rapture me up. I don't, but I get that we have physical fears that are outer fears, but most of our fear happens on the inside, and I think the reason why it's so funny is because we have a me first, a self-sufficient society that leads that has this idea that we don't need a strengthener or a helper or someone to hold us up, but we can fix things on our own. But we do need God. We do need him, and I wanted to kind of tell you this story today that will fit really good with this. Is a guy was walking down the street. And when he fell into a hole, and the walls were so steep that he couldn't get out. And so then a doctor passed by, and the guy shouted, "Hey, doc, can you help me get out?" And then the doctor wrote the man a prescription and threw it down in the hole and moved on. And then a philosopher came by, and the guy shouted, "Hey, can you help me out?" And the philosopher wrote him a lesson of the meaning of holes in life and threw it down to him. And then the priest came along, and and he shouted, "Hey, Father, I'm down here in this hole. Can you help me out?" And the priest wrote out a prayer and threw it down in the hole and moved on. And then the man's friend walked by, and he shouted, "Hey, Chris, it's me. I fell in a hole. Can you help me out?" And you know what Chris did? He jumped down in the hole. And the guy said, "What are you doing? Are you stupid? Now we are both stuck in the hole. I need to get out of the hole, not you being here with me." And I love his friend's response. He said, "I've been down here before. I know the way out." And man, doesn't that paint a good picture of Jesus, our helper? He doesn't just give us prescriptions to get out of trouble. He doesn't just give us the meaning of situation. He doesn't just offer us advice or prayer. He jumps down in the hole, and Jesus gets you help, and he helps you out. John 1:14 says this, that the Word became flesh and he dwelt among us. And what that means is Jesus left heaven and came down to earth so that he could be with us and strengthen us and help us. And I love that because here's the thing. At the beginning of this promise, it was said to you and me that we are chosen, since we have been chosen. And that's so true, that God has chosen us, and that's never going to change. That's never going to change. We were chosen, we are chosen, and we're going to be chosen for till the end of eternity. And we got to understand that. But it's a two-part thing. It's so important for you to know that God chose you. But what's your decision? What are you going to do with your life? See, God chose you, but I need to ask you this: who do you choose? We talked about some idols, and I really want us to really put this in perspective. Are you putting anything above God on your list? Because you got to understand this. It could be that whatever you fear is tied to what you're putting your faith in. What you fear can be tied to what you're putting your faith in. And I love this concept of God pursuing us, and it's all over the Bible, is that he's with us. We talked about last week how if we're in the heavens, he's there. If we're in the depths, he's there. If we're far away from him, he's pursuing us. If we're close to him, he's close to us. And this concept of Jesus being called the nickname Emmanuel, and God with us, and all of these things where God is pursuing us at all times. But we got to understand this. It's one thing for God to pursue us, but the biggest difference in your life will happen when you make the flip, when you start following Jesus. And so if it's one thing for him to follow us around, but our lives will never change until we start following him. So maybe you felt rejected, or that you have rejected, or you've walked away from God. I want you to know this, that it's not too late. It's not too late for you to start to choose him. He still chooses you. He still loves you. And I want to challenge you today to love and to choose him. Well, today, if that's you, and you can say through this whole thing, Pastor Qway, I've had fears. I still have fear. Even if you tell me not to fear, I'm still afraid, even in this moment. Well, here's what I can give you as a promise is that we don't have to, because God can walk with us, and we can follow him everywhere that he goes. We can follow his lead. We can follow the things that he's called us to follow. And if you're in that place where you say, man, I want to make that flip in my life. I want God to stop following me, and I want to start following Jesus. If that's you today, I want to pray with you, because I think that we can start a relationship with him today with the prayer right now, with you praying in your own way, and I'll pray with you. God, today I pray that you would allow the person that is watching us on the other side of this screen to realize that they can turn from the ways that they have been going, and they can confess that they want to follow you, and that you will change their life for the better, that you will help them know the true God, the one true God, that you will help them find freedom and purpose, and that they will ultimately be different and make a difference in your name, a true difference. They'll help others to know you. But God, first today, I want us to start a relationship. And I pray that you help them to find healing from their past and hope for their future. We thank you, and we know that in heaven that the angels are throwing a party because someone decided to follow Jesus today. Come on, man. Hey, look, I am so excited for you, and I just want you to know that we are here for you. We know that you had to make that decision alone, but you don't have to do this walk alone. You had to make a decision to follow Jesus. And here's what we want to do for you is we want to help you learn how to read your Bible and learn how to pray, and give you a community, and to give you ways to serve the Lord. And so, man, maybe you haven't gotten connected with the church yet. Here's what we encourage you to do. Drop a comment if you want to say, hey, I want to know more about the church. Or you can message us and say, I gave my life to Jesus. I started a relationship with him today, and I want to be connected to this community. I think that would be the best way for any of us to go, is to be connected to a group of godly people, so that we can grow together in our faith. Man, I thank you again for getting on today and watching and being a part of our service. We love you, and we can't wait to see you next time. Have a great week.